Hey, good morning, everyone. I think maybe afternoon, who knows? Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. We finally made it live. Thank you for being patient if you are waiting for the stream. And of course, welcome back and welcome to everyone who is here for this either live stream or if you're catching it on the replay. Thank you for being here. We're going to talk about that spell being broken today. So, sometimes it's really good to get your routine shook up a little bit and get yourself outside of, the normal routine, or sometimes it can turn into a rut, but just to kind of keep you on your toes, show how flexible you really are in maintaining your own center, and also how adaptable you can be, because that seems to be humanity's one of our primary positive traits is adaptability and mutability. And with Sagittarius and Pisces energy, that's really at the forefront today, at least with Neptune stationing direct and all this Sagittarius energy with Antares. Mutability is, shape-shifting, being malleable, shifting around, being flexible and adaptable is a big part of what's happening today. So the first thing I wanted to, first we'll go out of studio mode here. So the first thing I wanted to address today, we're going to look at this amazing reading that I did very early this morning, and then go into today's astrology, because we do have Neptune stationing direct. And the imagery, well, first of all, the spell is broken was a pretty clear insight almost first thing this morning, and waking up from my own process and saying, okay, it's time now. And the spell is broken is in itself an event, right? Something that has in fact happened with as a result of the work we've been doing, right? We have allowed, I think, for the space and acknowledgement for other people to also wake up. And we are all waking up in our own way, I assure you that, all right? If we feel like that we knew what the hell was going on, we are being tested with that big time right now. And that's okay. It's important. Sometimes that has been set up for a long time in order for us to learn a very valuable and permanent lesson about energetic and astral hygiene, for instance. This seems to be a very important topic to be discussing, especially with Neptune and Pisces stationing direct. Because now that the floodgates are opening and the tidewaters are going to start, really making themselves much more apparent and starting to, take over a lot more than it has been, it's going to be very powerful, and not everybody is going to respond in the same way. And we may find that this dissolution, even if the spell is broken, could really have a very tragic impact on some people. And we have to be aware of that and make space for that as well. And to make sure that in your own inspiration and creating a space for your own inspiration and your dreams and what you really are looking towards for the future, that it absolutely has to be in line and alignment with the highest divine potential and trajectory. Because if it's not, this is where we so easily are led astray, or we are taken in by something that looks shiny and is glimmering, but is not in fact the actual gold. So we have so much to talk about in this way, which is why I didn't just say, I don't need to do a transmission today. I definitely needed to do this transmission today. So the first thing, the imagery that seems to be sticking out the most for me in today's general intuitive and energetic imprint is, if you remember, or if you've even seen, but definitely if you remember the scene from the second Indiana Jones movie, right? The Temple of Doom, with the thuggy cult, right? That's based around Kali. There's a scene where they force him to drink the blood, right? And he becomes part of the spell, right? He's under the spell of whatever was in that skull, whatever blood was in that skull. And it's not until later that at the very, at the pinnacle climax moment where he's about to sacrifice the main character, the main female lead character, right? He is He burns him. He burns him and it breaks the spell. And so when we talked about letting it burn yesterday, it doesn't mean it's not going to sting. And we've been talking about Antares now for quite a few days. And the sting is very real. And it's going to come in a lot of different ways and has been if it hasn't hit you already. And the spell may be broken, but we still need to act. And when we see not only the intuitive message for today, but also the astrology. There's with all the Sagittarius energy, it's important that we allow for the burn and that we see things clearly when the spell is broken, but we don't, I would say, I would recommend that we get going with it, and whatever. And that was part of yesterday's transmission too, wasn't it? Right? That this is a cycle of growth, and the burning away has already happened, or we can anticipate that it will on some level, and already kind of have our focus on that particular outcome of putting down new roots, having new growth, right? And like I said, it's not going to be the same for everyone. With Neptune stationing direct, I mean, a Pisces energy with Neptune making it that much more powerful and that much more nebulous, that much more fluid and malleable. There are things like addiction. There are things like infection. There are things like psychosis that come with the Pisces archetype when the boundaries are slipping away and you find yourself slipping away with them. So there could very well be a time now where the direct motion or the prograde motion of Neptune is going to increase these potentials in people if they have not already prepared themselves, I think, to act after the broken spell. And this is somewhere that starseeds and light workers and anybody who's just on this journey to be a awakened and spiritually connected human being can be capable and open and hold and be aware to assist other people, and also too to be aware in ourselves that there is always the opportunity for something to become attached, right? And so if you're dealing with that kind of issue, or if it's coming up in your life in some way, realizing these old patterns, literal entity attachments, maybe karmic, right? Maybe ancestral. I think a lot of people are dealing with that. And plus the Atlantean aspect. This is something that's worth investigating, at least on a personal level, on your own digging, right? What does it mean? Every book I read, every website or blog or listen to a video or a podcast, like there's so many variables on what Atlantis was and Lemuria and what it means to us, what the symbolism is, and what actually happened. So once you start really digging in, you start to find the consistencies that this civilization was definitely important and advanced and was destroyed, but everybody's rendition of it is a little different. And this, again, is going to be very important to keep in mind, and our own intuition and discernment, right? People say this word all the time, discernment, but they don't ever actually teach you how to be discerning energetically or how to necessarily execute good hygiene, astral hygiene, energetic hygiene. And we had that opportunity with the moon in Virgo, right? It was in a square to the sun. We have to be very objective and realistic, but also and discerning about our energy and who we're allowing in, what type of focus we are allowing ourselves to have, and to realize that whenever it takes nothing. The Draco energy will embed, and you won't even know that it's there, and it could be passed down through your literal genetics or your bloodline, or if you haven't seen Twin Peaks, I know this is kind of a non sequitur, but it's really not. I really feel like it would be worth the watch, and to really put the time into actually viewing it with a critical eye and really looking at the symbolism. That's just that's a series that I will watch yearly, right? And go back and unpack with a different perspective. Anyway, those concepts about ancestral attachments and how they manifest through people, and they can be there for a long time, right? Embedded. We have to be very realistic about these things. And even those types of things are coming up to the surface and being cleared away and being seen for what they are. And it can be really, really unsettling when you think you know, and maybe you've relied upon this particular aspect of yourself to, to be able to have insight into the world around you and to people, and maybe be psychic or intuitive or creative. And you realize that there's something about it that has been feeding a service to self type of oriented direction. It's not easy. And, this is talked about a lot in more of the monotheistic religious circles about Lucifer and how he, was the brightest and the most, the favored, right? The favorite of God. And so there's all these similarities with these characters across religions and cultures and historical times. And so I think a lot of this stuff is going to start coming out, and the burning away is our alchemical tool, right? But we have to allow the burning. And I think that with all of it in square to Pisces coming, because Sagittarius is naturally square to Pisces, the mutability in terms of experience versus action is going to be very key. And we have to really keep, with Neptune stationing direct in Pisces, we also have the capacity to really tap in to our endless reservoir of compassion and unconditional love for people as well, and ourselves. So that's always a possibility, but it does get more fluid, and it also can, for those who are not aware of themselves or have energetic and astral hygiene, which is all that Virgo energy really stands for, then you can easily get swept away. And I do anticipate that we will see some of that, but we can really be a force of good in that process if we see it and choose to at least address ourselves first, and then extend that to other people that maybe are just now being like, what is going on? Is this it? Because that's part of the spell being broken. You've been under a spell or hypnotized for your whole life, and you wake up out of it. It's just like the Matrix, right? It's very shocking. So this transmission is going to be for those of us who are, ready for battle, so to speak, and have been training for this time frame, and to master the flame, right, in order to perform that alchemical transmutation. So I'm going to pop over to the chat here. I want to see if the stream is doing well. It seems to be excellent. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to catch this on the replay, and that's totally fine. That's the thing about this work. It is outside of time and space. So the first thing I want to do is show the reading, as we usually do. And all right, I don't have my bowl. I keep forgetting it. I wonder why that is. I think I've just been out of the habit, or haven't had the habit long enough to really just make it part of my everyday, almost unconscious activity. So there you go. That's something to consider as well. You have to do something so much over and over and over again to build new neural pathways. And that also goes for energetic and astral hygiene. This is why daily practices of meditation, clearing your space, doing energy work on yourself. Reiki, you can do Reiki on yourself, or you can be part of Reiki circles where it's just a gathering of practitioners that can take care of each other, but also too being able to do it on yourself, clearing yourself out, Epsom salt baths, using your crystals appropriately, and making sure that you're of the highest divine channel of power, because anything less is corruptible. And I think that it's important to realize that there may be components that are part of us that have been that have allowed for a corruption within ourselves that we have to really root out. And we are in a position right now to actually see it for what it is. Before Neptune fully starts moving prograde or direct. So there's this stasis point as we shift gears, and this is going to be a time to really see things very, very clearly for the first time, maybe ever for some people. So I love the chronology here for our reading. So here's our causal factor of our 10 of discs from yesterday. It's so awesome. And we have gathered in the fruits of our labor, have we not? Have we not brought in the richest potentials of this earthly material cycle and coming to the end of the line, which is simultaneously the beginning of the line? And everything that we have gathered in is part of our experience and our material experience, and is what we have to offer. It is all about doing this work to be of service, to offer a part of ourselves to relationship, offer what we have gathered into the social order. However you see that seventh house, which is our committed interpersonal relationships. This is where Virgo is putting its energy ultimately. The priestesses that maintain the flame of the community. And the flame of the community really does feel a lot of times like Leo. It's all of the fire elements really, or all the signs within the element of fire, because there's different types of fire, right? There's the spark, there's the combustion and the release, and then there is the coal fire of Sagittarius, right? The burning embers that can be stoked and are so hot you can cook on, right? And that's interesting too, because Aries is electrical fire. Leo as the sun is nuclear energy, right, being released, and then and light being released from nuclear reaction. And then you have, of course, Sagittarius, which is the actual burning of organic matter. So interesting. That's just interesting. That's just me going off on a tangent. So here we have the Mercury in Virgo card, the 10 of discs, the culmination of the material cycle. Now this is our causal factor, which was at the center of our reading yesterday. So we know that we are still holding on to all of our coin, whatever that coin is, and whatever coin we have committed ourselves to procuring is going to have a big impact on the magic that we practice and the quality of our soul and the meaning of it. Ooh. There have been a lot of people that have tried to make a profit off of certain movements it's just coming out of the woodwork. There's just no way around it. And with the moon in Scorpio today, going back over the point of the new moon, that we're still in that cycle, that Scorpio new moon, we're going to feel, how was the work in the lab of our soul? Did we put pieces, we come up with something that we hadn't come up with before? I think we all probably have. And again, we might not like what we are seeing. But nevertheless, we accumulated these resources by our own actions and our own inaction even, because that's also an action, when you choose not to act. So, and I'm not talking about fight, flight, or freeze. That's like your nervous system responding to real survival issues. I'm talking about more than that, right? Frontal lobe type of senses. And so we're bringing into the moment still everything we've accumulated, the fruits of our labor. What did we commit ourselves to gathering? What is all the coin, right? I mean, that's something we have to ask ourselves too at a larger level. So, and here we are, the center of it all is our alchemy, is the art of the alchemy. This is the Sagittarius card. We have Sun in Sagittarius, Mercury Sagittarius, Vesta coming into conjunction with Antares. Now, the flame herself coming into conjunction with the heart of the Scorpion. So again, there is a strong desire to be to transform and to assist and to get everybody on board. I mean, Sagittarius is about the group meaning or the collective value. So at the center here, we have our alchemical process, the art of alchemy, right? We want to dissolve and then combine. Or, who this is Mercury as the ruler of the 6th house. And then we have Mercury in Virgo as the preceding. So everything that we have put ourselves into analyzing and discriminating and discerning and actually doing the work to gather in all of these resources, we are now bringing that into the moment of where we actually put that into action, which is the alchemical process. We take what we've gathered, and now we bring it into, we dissolve it and combine it. It references the perfect balance. Contrast should be put together to enrich the inner spectrum. That's also a possibility. So people coming together. Family members may be coming together. Maybe people are realizing that they are going to create something as a result of everything that they have accumulated so far. And it's inevitably going to have the same result, which is a huge matrix destruction, right? We have the devil reversed. So before we get to that, though, we'll go over where we are at energetically and where we can get the most out of our energetic polarity and our vertical axis of power. Because either way you look at it, Pluto is, like I said, doing what Pluto does, and it's just destroying this process, or destroying our matrixality, our institutions, the governments, right? Our economy as a whole, and that's been known for a long time. And so there have been all these factors in place to mitigate this or control this. Is it even controllable? I mean, it seems like hubris in some ways, regardless of how advanced or organized or how much historical precedent has been set for, centuries to bring us to this point of humanity. But can it be controlled? I think that that's something we should be asking ourselves in general. And if you're on the team of trust the plan, regardless of what the plan is. I mean, are you part of making that plan? I don't know. So these are just questions. They're just questions. But what we are seeing is that regardless, the art of our alchemy is going to bust down what is here. So, and the fire is going to burn it all away, whether we like it or not. And what we create, or in fact what we destroy in terms of our material reality, will have a lot to do with the coin that we have accumulated by our efforts and our labors. So where are we? So it can, this seems very favorable, especially when you see where the energetic polarity within each of us can really be aligned with. So, but it also depends on how if you're a person that really finds yourself more interested in materialism and the realm of Capricorn as the only thing, then yeah, when this is flipped over and it's being unraveled, it can be very distressing. So this is the Ascended Master Hilarion, right? And number 5, there's a lot of 5s and a lot of numbers divisible by 5 in this reading so far. We have the 10, we have 14, so 1 and 4 is 5. We have 5 here, and then 15 is divisible by 5 3 times. So, and then the Devil card is actually 16, or 15, sorry, 1 plus 5 again. So that's very interesting as well. Divisible by 5 3 different times. It's interesting that the Devil and the Muse have the same number in these 2 different tarot decks. Anyway, so, and 5 is kind of like the bottoming out in some ways of the experience, and which leads us then to come back and make the most out of our opportunities and learning experiences. So Hilarion, speaking of learning, Ascended Master of research and knowledge and truth and concrete knowledge, right? This individual is in a lab. That's very interesting when we talk about the new moon cycle that we are still in with the laboratory of our inventing in a laboratory. But this is much more of the research phase, it appears, and surrounded by these silhouettes of all of these different figures from different time periods, different ages, all kinds of different identities. But the thing that's common is that they're not physically there. They are imprints energetically or psychically, perhaps that Hilarion, through his study and his research in his lab, was able to figure out, how to have more contact with these individuals. Maybe he's just surrounded by an ancestral lineage that is part of the bigger picture. either way, Hilarion as an ascended master at this position is really showing us that we can be rooted and grounded and gather our power from a place that has to do with knowledge and research. And here's where discernment comes back in. So if you are not sure what's going on, if you are at a position you're like, whoa, I thought I knew, but I'm finding out that I didn't know, or I thought something different, or I've been deceived, or whatever. There's a lot of different ways this can be expressed. We can root and gather our power and really activate subconsciously through our meditation and our prayer and creativity as well, that we want to know more, and we have to actually do the research. There's nobody else in here except those who have already been and are not physically incarnate. It's just the ascended master in the lab. And so this is very diligent and kind of serious in some ways, right? But it's also important. I think that we take some time here to really get into this space and start researching for ourselves, and also realize it's through our own discernment, our own research, our own detection of actual evidence, right? Like forensics, really doing the work in the realm of accumulation of knowledge and coming to our own conclusions, right? Thinking for ourselves, not being trapped in other people's perspectives. This is where it's important that that we are here. And this is why I think ultimately this reading is for those of us who are about to bust through. And that's what we're here to do, and be aware of it. Either way you look at it, the alchemy that is happening, and it's going to, in fact, turn the world upside down, so to speak. So we want to be rooted in this position of really actually detecting what is going on and having concrete knowledge. And when you see what's surrounding it, Caught in the Ruins is right after the Muse, right? Number 16, and that's reversed, right? So we're getting dumped right out of our self-imposed prison. And the spider here too, right? Like we're being released from somebody else's web of lies, and learning to figure it out for ourselves. And that's really difficult when you've trusted a particular source of information, believing and them asserting that they are there for your, for the same reasons. And maybe you realize that their intentions were much more about their own self-preservation, which is the Draco thing. It's where the Draco come in and really are the most corrupting force, I think. So Hilarion we have here, and we see when we can release this energy, and our conscious attention can be really focused on what's going on out here, is about being inspired. So this is a very Piscean energy too, the Muse, right? This is the Piscean places where people find their inspiration for their creative expression, right? Or anything really. I mean, it's about being tapped into the source of all, and any creative person will usually tell you that that is where they discover or where they find inspiration for some sort of creative piece or project, or just being inspired in their own life as well. And there's a lot of resourcefulness here, like heightened resourcefulness. There's a lot of inspiration, obviously, that comes from the Muse. It's opening up to this. And Neptune in Pisces, now stationing direct or prograde, is going to, give us access. I think it's just going to make the whole realm so much more powerful and potent. And but also too, again, it's important that the space that we create for this influx of inspiration is a sacred space. And it is only this Michael here that is I know we're kind of going outside of the normal, but it just feels right. Michael here reversed, Archangel Michael. Remember, we had the flaming heart just yesterday. If this is not your true intention of receiving, and something else to consider, there's another way to read this too, is that Archangel Michael is one of the fixed royal stars, which is Aldebaran, right? which is directly opposite from Antares, right? Archangel Uriel. So another way to read this is Michael being reversed is highlighting Antares. And so if we want to get the full effect of the Antarian cleansing by fire, especially and essentially, we need to create a sacred space for that allows us to be inspired in a way that inspires our compassion, our forgiveness, unconditional love, right? Imagination, right? In terms of creating things that are beautiful and creating things that are good, as opposed to being broken down by this. And without a sacred space, a truly sacred space in especially these upper chakras where we tend to get easily influenced but all kinds of different ways, advertising and social media and TV and all of it, and even just signals from all of our devices tends to come in through there. If we don't squeegee that third eye for sure and have a sacred vessel, revere ourselves as our own as a temple, there's where the corrupting force, I think, really can come in. And it's not the force itself, it's just what it feels like to get burned, and we have to let it burn. If we really want to pull, if we want things to really unravel in a way that is in our favor, I guess, we can't allow ourselves to be corrupted or broken down or just burn away our entire selves. We want a sacred space. And I think that this is so easily where the Draco energy can come through and corrupt us in the face of the Antarian nature. Also, too, to accept that the destruction that is represented by Antares, even though there's tragedy involved, even though it is not an easy situation, maybe we don't, maybe we lose things as a result of it. It was Archangel Uriel that was able to give people, right? Was able to give people who still had a moral compass that was calibrated, the reasons for the devastation and to understand why it happened and how to move forward. So it has to be of the highest integrity. There's no way around it, even to receive such a strong and potentially damaging revelation about oneself, about other people. So, but the thing is, it's through our own research and really rooting into a strong just desire and a strong, not even a desire, but almost a responsibility in some ways to actually get into the full range of knowledge. And with the North Node and Rahu have been in Gemini now for this has been the time where we have all been directed into this area. So we've fallen out of, this shows us falling out of our self-imposed prison, falling out of the web that's been woven for us, and being the ones that are able to do it ourselves. But first we have to actually fall out of it. And part of that is because we have been committed, and there's been a sense of responsibility in terms of, really learning our own discernment. And that means you have to interface with information that challenges you at first so that you can practice really listening and really feeling your own body when you hear information and trusting. And sometimes we just have to fuck it up. And then you go back and you're like, oh, these were all the red flags that showed me that my intuition was trying to tell me, but I ignored it. So the destruction is here, and well, it's coming. What's right here is our alchemical mastery, and I think that we're doing a great job, but we also have to be very realistic that this is going to be where the only real strategy for them at this point, whatever that is anymore, is to just distract and to just cover it up, or to just infuse the field with so much that it's confusing as to what's real and what's not. And it's been the people, I think, that have been committed, again, like Hilarion, to really have gone into the realm of all knowledge that can be acquired, and going through it and doing real research, not just confirming their own bias so that they can feel better, because it's not through the feeling better that we grow and evolve. Unfortunately, it's through the experiences that have challenged us, and where we have to realize that we were deceived, or we were wrong, or we've missed something, or a very loud car with no mufflers going up my road. Okay, so that's the intuitive portion of this transmission. I hope that it resonates with you the same way it does with me, because I'm like, okay, it's time to get on it now. And let's move over here into the astrology for today, because just like we do every day. So I'm curious how people are doing, and how they are feeling. The stream is good. Okay, thank you. I'm glad. I'm just curious how people are feeling, what's going on for them. Feedback is great. And if you are interested in energetic support, especially for your process, if you feel like this is very resonant with you, or you're starting to have kind of stirrings in some ways, because that was a big part of when all of the Sagittarian energy crossed K2 last week, right? When they crossed the South Node or K2, the stirring of those energies, it began. It certainly began. And then when Mercury and the Sun came together in that Cazimi in Sagittarius, that's when we became much more aware, possibly more expressive, possibly more explosive, or eruptive, or certainly just brighter and more intense in terms of like, oh, this is what's been bubbling under the surface this whole time. So let's go back a little bit, because this is our chart for today, and our moon is officially now in Scorpio. So it's just going to get even more intense feeling. Isn't that, oh man, it's so, looking forward to that so much. And theatrical, potentially very theatrical, because the Sun is still pretty much in direct conjunction with Antares right now. Mercury has moved on past the Sun. It is in a quincunx today with Uranus. So Mercury is the higher mind. Uranus is in is the higher octave, like the collective mind. I have a random question at some point if somebody wanted to answer. Do you ever see the cursor on the video or on the stream? Because I'm using the mouse cursor on the actual screen, and I'm just curious if you ever see it, because otherwise, because I do actually point things out as we go along, and maybe I need some sort of stylus and the ability to write on the screen. I'm just curious. Anyway, so before that quincunx, I believe, happened while the moon was still, no. So the moon moved into Scorpio not that long ago, actually. So we will go back in time here and look at it. There we go. So this was, the moon moved into Scorpio, like about, looks like, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the first thing that happened was also around that time. So if we just go forward like an hour to the morning, so we know that Neptune has already stationed, but because it's not moving direct quite yet, it still has that red color to it, which on this chart means that it's retrograde. So it's already stationed, which means that, there it is. So by the end of tonight, it'll be moving, it'll be in its official prograde, I guess, motion. So, but let's go back. It did station first thing this morning, right? It started to stop or it came to a standstill entirely when the moon came into Scorpio. So what we're going to find is that Mars is still in that trine to Scorpio, to Neptune as well. It's looser now, right? It's not as exact, and Mars is now in a position where we are releasing a lot of aggressive tendencies through Mars. Some people could really, really release some that find your safety valve. That's all I'm gonna say. Find your safety valve, or a very healthy masculine expression of what otherwise would be a very natural but instinctual aggression. That's also part of the Scorpio archetype. And with Antares in the picture right now, especially the Sun right in conjunction with it, the sting is severe. And so there's going to be that instinctual wanting to act out. And so find the culturally and socially appropriate ways to do that, because this is going to be by far the strongest, because it's Mars. So it's acting on its will and represents our own acting on our will and subjective experience. The moon is now in Scorpio at this point, though. So the first thing it's going to do is come into a quincunx with her own north node in Rahu. So Gemini and Scorpio in a quincunx. And so this is, how do we, this feels very palpable to me right now. You know, we're all being led on this journey of consciousness and becoming aware of our own consciousness and what that entails and how we operate in the world around us. That's a very Gemini, especially Mercury in Gemini and third house type of experience. And this is where Rahu is, and it's soon going to be over. And we're going to be in the realm of experiential feeling of Taurus and Scorpio when the nodes shift. But for now, we're still here in Gemini, and we're still leaving ourselves open to receive either the blessings or the acknowledgement or just something that as a result of the implementation of our own discovery and exploration into the realm of consciousness itself, right? This is going to be when the node shifts into conjunction with Alcyon directly. This is where we're going to be looking through. It's like we're going to be all being drawn towards looking at the underlying structures, right? So the spell right now is in fact broken, but it's going to be over, over this season, mostly of the winter. I think that we're going to be working with the North Node at Alcyon, right? The main star in the Pleiades star cluster. So we're technically getting into that Pleiadian territory, but it's that moment where we go from just communion with what is and not having an awareness of it to actually having full awareness. It's like looking through a glass bottom boat. That's actually what the Sabian symbol is that you're looking through a glass bottom boat at the ocean. And so you have this full range of exposure in some ways, almost directly to the realm of the collective unconscious through your own nervous system. But there's something in place that keeps you from being fully submerged, right? And so that's going to be a big theme here in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, we are preparing ourselves in some ways by learning how to wait and to be ready and to trust that it's coming, that that we will receive some acknowledgement or some representation of that which we have implemented in terms of discovering about ourselves, especially our own consciousness. I think that that's going to be very relevant soon, because I think that there are many of us that have already been doing this work, but there's a lot of people that are not even considering the very real experience of their own consciousness and what that entails. So in the meantime, the quincunx, though, to this moon in Scorpio is the feeling of like, okay, it's one thing to be like, I want to widen my experience of being in interpersonal relationship, in a community, in a society, right? Let's get on the tour bus to hell together, and I'm all in, right? The second degree of Scorpio is just like, oh, you do something, you knock something over, and you get this very olfactory remembrance of what has been left behind as a result of your journey into the underworld, essentially, which is you're giving up something that had been a part of your past that had to be surrendered in order to go on this journey. So the quincunx here is really about how we feel and how our soul, where our soul is pulling us. And I think that there is some nostalgia. There's been a lot of nostalgia. And this is just kind of showcasing it just for a moment, that there is nostalgia about what's being left behind, and we feel it very distinctly. In Moon and Scorpio, you can really sink down if you're not careful. And this is the beginning of it. You're like, oh, but at a soul level, that it's not about what is being left behind, but where we're going, and even being open to being open to, patiently waiting, almost, and realizing that, we're going to be getting, like I said, acknowledgement, or some type of spiritual blessing that we are anxiously awaiting, right? So this moment here is just like, oh, right? And how do you transmute that? Well, I would say that the best way to do that is to realize that you can't, if you keep everything stuffed in your stocking from last year, there's no room. There's no room for the new thing to come in. And I think that that's, or anything like that. That's just an imagery thing. So that's that moment here with this moon in Scorpio. But it's just going to keep getting more intense as the moon moves through Scorpio throughout the day. And then it'll come into a quincunx with Chiron. Another quincunx. So this Scorpio moon is going to be really initiating a lot of emotional adjustment in general today. So here is the quincunx to a Chiron and Aries. And again, I think that there's going to be a strong urge in some ways to really fix some problems here and use our, society has the capacity to create, what we produce is awesome, but sometimes what we produce can be destructive. And we have to use that same ingenuity and inventiveness in order to come up with a solution together to address the problem that was created by our production in the first place, right? So the best way to look at this is like a dentist. At work, basically. The same society that created the need for a dentist is also creating the dentist. Again, it's like a closed system with because Scorpio is, in fact, what you produce as a result of these two aspects on either side of the scale coming together. What they produce is new and unique, but this is about the feeling that pulls people together in order to do something. And so I think this is much later today, wanting to do something about something, feeling the urge to really like fix a problem and get down to it and drill into some damage. And that again will be another way that Chiron will just pull us right off our center and just be like, oh, there's something to fix. Oh, there's something wrong with me. Oh, I should feel guilty about who I am if I'm not perfect. Oh man, I'm gonna, blah, 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 and then you just cascade out of, out into oblivion on the shame and the guilt trip on yourself. So that will again require us to adjust ourselves. There is our alchemy one more time, right? Another way that this can be, really, bring us back to our own center, to realize that we have everything that we need in order to alchemize these situations. And Mercury in a quincunx to Uranus, this is the third major quincunx today, that's also happening, is by the very end of today, is another opportunity between our own mental capacity and functioning and the larger, higher octave of the mind, the collective mind, the the Aquarian mind, the social organism's mind as a whole. And so we're all kind of like collectively window shopping for what is the timeline, not so much the timeline, but like how are we going to dress ourselves, for this process. Like, if you've ever seen, God, what's that movie? Well, there's so many about like The Looking Glass, The Looking Glass, or that movie. There's a show that was called Fringe, right, where they had the viewing window. You can just think about that, but we're window shopping, right? We're like, oh, look, there is an experience, or there's an experience. I like that. And so it's being, what we can have is kind of up in the air right now in terms of, oh, look at all of the options, and we're internalizing that. But Mercury is absolutely moving direct, and also in Sagittarius, which means that Mercury is at its least powerful. Trusting the body is a big part of where Mercury is in this configuration. Trusting the body, and also, really turning ourselves into a spiritual ideal, which is a really great, noble idea. And that's all Sagittarius is, a lot of the big, noble, great ideas, right? And the sun is still right here, which means the sun is going to quincunx Uranus at the same place tomorrow. And the sun may have a little bit more power in terms of our expression and our conscious attention and finding our voice than Mercury is in Sagittarius at the moment. So it might be a different experience of this moment tomorrow. But what it feels like is that, yeah, those are great. It's a great idea to get our minds, like, to let go of the mental aspect exclusively and get back into the wisdom of our own bodies. And that's a great idea to sell ourselves right now. But the wisdom of our bodies is actually like glitching in and out with Uranus right now. And I think that the glitching and all of the different, windows that keep popping up, I was like, oh, what's going on? And the lack of stability around the wisdom of our body is really going to help us awaken and to innovate a lot more, I think, than this one moment of like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to trust the wisdom of my body. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is the wisdom of the body is Taurus. And right now it's glitching. I think there's an important reason for that, because the whole matrix is glitching and it's the result of our work that we're doing alchemically. So here's another opportunity. It's not that we shouldn't trust the wisdom of our body or that we shouldn't put our mental activity towards that particular outcome. It's just that it's the idea alone isn't going to make it work when the actual body itself, or what we identify as the body, or the energy, the grid, or the energy, our grid, our Merkaba, the planet's Merkaba, is glitching, and so much that we are not even sure like what's real anymore. So there's a lot to be had in this situation, but I think the biggest potential in this quincunx is how do we actually trust the wisdom of our body when that is happening, right? I think we can get a lot from that, and I think that'll make a little bit more sense, and we'll kind of like know how to act on that a little bit better tomorrow when the sun comes into that position. Okay, so the moon comes into square Saturn by the very end of today. Now, Saturn has moved into its next degree. Oh my. This is a very distinct shifting point in, in Aquarius, it goes, excuse me, hold on. I need to clear my throat for this one. Okay, thank you. There we go. I don't know why I'm acknowledging your patience while I clear my throat. So, this is a pretty distinct changeover from the 9th to the 10th degree, because just like with all numerology, right, you're moving from the 9 culmination to the 10, which is a completion of a cycle, right? And so if 9 represents like the fullness of our spiritual experience, right, 3, 6, and 9, and then 10 is the coming back around again, right? The magician and the fool together, right? The 1 and the 0. The alpha and the omega, I guess. Either way, with Saturn in particular in Aquarius, this is a very difficult transition. This is going from a very strong and formed yet responsible role of becoming the doer of what we see, right? That we are putting our abstraction into action, that we are acting on the archetype and principles that we have started to engage with in terms of what does it mean to be in an awake society. Now, the 10th degree of Aquarius is a lot more realistic, because it has to do with seeing people for who they really are and not projecting not projecting onto them as if they are screens our own our own ideals and dreams, right? So the symbol itself is a man who had for a time become the embodiment of a popular ideal, is made to realize that as a person, he is not this ideal. So we need to deal with human beings as persons rather than as screens upon which one projects our dream and ideal. There's so many things that this relates to right now. It's not even worth going into all of the different corners of the public sphere and who has been in the public sphere, I suppose, that this could fit into. But so this is going to be a disappointing time with Saturn in this degree, but it's also very liberating and also very realistic of its time. You don't get a healthy Aquarian collective or a fully awake Aquarian collective without people being real. And that's a Leo issue. And that's when we had the moon in Leo last week, that's where we really felt into who we really were, flaws and all, ego and all. And we may have gotten that was a rough time. It wasn't rough, but it felt really intense. And what we take with us into the Virgo cycle when we reach Draco or Thuban, that is where it makes or breaks you, right? That's where you decide what you're taking on with you in the surrender to yourself. Are you taking service to others or service to self along the way? So I always thought that it was interesting that Draco was in the sign of Virgo, but I think, and that's always associated with purity and virtue, and it is, depending on what you're devoted to, which is what you really feel during the fifth house and the Leo energy. So anyway, this is going to be a difficult time with Saturn, right? Because Saturn is like, this is just what it is. This is the structure. This is the form. This is the responsibility and the karma of the Aquarian, this Aquarian age, and we have to actually deal with this. Right now, the moon in Scorpio at this moment is also, so it's a square, right? And these fixed squares, and it's, there's going to be a type of remembrance. Again, here's that nostalgia concept coming up, but in a way that's a little different. We're going to find that the reuniting of old comrades, right? Overtones of the human relationship that's based on a community of work or experience, right? We really want that feeling, right? We want that feeling. We want to feel the reuniting of old comrades, right? When you haven't talked to people or like old workmates or people that you had gone through a particular situation with, and if you think about it like as soldiers, for instance, because a lot of the military soldiers are wrapped up in the Scorpio archetype a lot of times. We want to, come together and reminisce, and there's nostalgia, and we're going to feel that, and we're going to have an urge to feel that. The square to Saturn, the square to Saturn in Aquarius by the end of today is going to be so challenging because we're really going to want to kind of ignore. In that moment, there's a potential to ignore what is really right in front of us. Emotionally, right? Our emotions are fixed, but they're definitely fixed in the realm of the deep, and we want to connect, and we want to feel the intensity of that bond. And maybe we go back to old relationships that we really do know who they are now, and that's what Saturn and Aquarius is going to be a real bummer about, right? So all of these quincunxes leading up to it are getting us kind of adjusted to being able to adjust ourselves and to see things from a different perspective, and to realize that even in pain and being burned for some, in some ways, that in itself is an energy we can use to transmute into growth and good and compassion and forgiveness, even for ourselves. But we also, this is where people really will struggle letting go of what they know is bad for them, because it felt really good at one point. And not being able to turn away from the reality of it is where Saturn in Aquarius is really going to, block a lot of things. Thankfully, it's not often that you're like, oh, I love Saturn, but in this case, we really kind of need Saturn. So, that's by the end of today. So when we come into tomorrow, we're getting so close to this eclipse, guys. It is quite the experience. When we come into tomorrow, which is the 2nd, the moon will, oppose Uranus. We have the sun that's going to eventually come into a quincunx with... that might not happen actually until the 3rd, like right on the 3rd, maybe late on the 2nd on the West Coast. But the moon's gonna meet Mars, gonna be opposite Uranus, is going to be making sextiles to both Venus and Pluto over in Capricorn. So we'll see that, there may be some intense feelings, but we have the opportunity to not only transubstantiate them, but also to transubstantiate within ourselves the elements in Capricorn that are represented by that devil card reverse that are being, overturned and disrupted. And so we can take the feeling of that, the energy of that, and apply it and invest that into our own process and vice versa. So tomorrow, and Chiron will be in a trine to Vesta, also in conjunction with Antares. So the burn is not going away anytime soon, my friends. So just be aware of that, because the moon is in Scorpio. So it'll go over by tomorrow. It'll meet that 12 to 13 degrees right here of Scorpio, of the last new moon. So we'll feel it. This is going to be overnight, maybe early in the morning for some people. And so be aware of that, because that's going to give you a lot of insight into what you have discovered so far. Did you go into the lab like Hilarion of your soul? Did you really, truly commit to going within the data, no matter investigating, no matter what you find, and really having the courage? Mars has the courage, and right now Mars is pissed, and Mars is like, I'm not taking it anymore. I got to find an outlet, and Mars will. That's the thing about Mars. So in Scorpio, it can be really obsessive and intense, but there is a lot of power here, especially a lot of masculine power. So just know where to direct it so that you make the most of it. And eventually the moon will be in a trine to a direct Neptune, which will be tomorrow. Let's see here, right before it comes into, so, for all intents and purposes, the moon's going to be in conjunction with Mars, and then trine Neptune, now going direct. And we remember this same degree that the sun and Mercury and Mars and even Venus a while ago all came into the trine at Scorpio with Neptune, which is a soldier disobeying orders and following his conscience. So one last time, just for Jesus, to feel deeply within us, where we are aligned, what we are aligned with, who we're aligned with, and who we are willing to put ourselves on the line for, and what. And from there, when the moon meets Mars tomorrow, I feel like that it'll be really allow us to, it'll give us the safety valve mechanism, the actual culturally appropriate way to release where Mars is at. Because right now, I think we're having kind of a hard time with it, or just putting the cap back on, which is not very healthy either, especially with, all this this fire into the cauldron. You know what happens. You put a lid on that shit, it's going to start bubbling over. We need to have an outlet. The steam needs to be released, and I think that's really going to be a big part of the moon tomorrow. So anyway, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate your patience. I hope you catch this on the replay. It was just too important not to give something today with Neptune stationing direct. So if you are interested in the eclipse reading, we look at your chart for the next 6 months. We're so close to this solar eclipse. So you can book that through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. You go to the services resources tab and then scroll down and there's like a little form that you fill out. You can email me directly. The email is also in the description box. It's $99. It's a 90-minute recording of an astrology reading for your chart. And we go on a journey from these eclipses throughout the next 6 months and what to expect, what areas of your life to be impacted, if there are any starseed markings that are coming into play. So that's a couple more days that I'm going to be offering that. So you can book that as well. And then if you feel like you need energetic support, Reiki, if you are dealing with any kind of like unwanted attachment, or you feel like there needs to be cord cutting or any kind of like psychic surgery type of thing, that's something that we can do as well. We can do that remotely. So you can, again, book through catalystenergies.net. In the description box below. If you want to support this work financially, you can subscribe through Subscribestar. I have a $3 a month rate right now of subscription, which is just to help, fill in the gaps and allow me to get some better equipment for these broadcasts. And I'm on Facebook and Telegram. Catalyst Energies is on Facebook and Telegram, so you can keep in touch through social media as well, and that's usually where I post. But if you subscribe to this channel, you'll know when I upload, and especially if you hit the little notification bell, you'll definitely know when I go live or when I upload. So, guys, have a great day. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Good job. We're all doing so well. It's time to get moving, though. The spell might be broken, but that's exactly the time that we need to, it's a time that we need to be very aware and be ready to act when we are, when we need to. So, and I would say that the eclipse normally, the new moon normally would be setting the intentions for the week, or the month, but allow for a much slower process to unfold over the next 6 months with this eclipse portal really closing on the 4th. So, love you guys. Thanks for being here. I will see you tomorrow. God bless you. Bye.